good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Welcome to the Gameweek 12 pod of the FPL Wire. I'm your host, Zoph. My co-host, Pras, and I are joined today by a very special guest. If you search for greatest catch ever on YouTube, you'll see a picture of Pras, obviously. But if you search for greatest cricket catch ever, you'll see a video of our guest, which has over 13 million views. We are delighted to have Scotland international cricketer Brad Curry, aka FPL Schofield, on with us today. Welcome to the FPL Wire, Brad.
Thank you, guys. We were just chatting earlier. It's honestly, I'm starstruck. It's an absolute privilege. So, thanks for getting me on.
The privilege is ours, man. I mean, this is the first, professional cricketer we've had on the podcast. There's another one we've lined up, and that's for later. But, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. And you know what is so special? You're not only a international cricketer with the greatest catch of all time, but you are a massive FPL geek. And so before we get into the catch, tell us about your FPL interest. Like, how did you get into FPL?
I think I started playing properly as I define it now. This is my third season of it properly. I played here and there, but didn't sort of plan ahead or look too much, and would no doubt miss deadlines. But I've got a good, strong core group of lads, sort of local to me, who play for cricket for Dorset together, and I don't know, we all shared the same sort of interest, and it's definitely spiraled from there. The league's got more competitive every year. We all try and help each other out because we're all in other leagues as well. So I reckon it spiraled from there, but we've nicknamed ourselves the FPL Badgers. So we just sort of live and breathe it, I guess. And then, we sort of rip each other to shreds for good game weeks and bad game weeks. So the classic, really.
Love it. I was telling Zoph before you came on that you're very popular, and obviously you're on Twitter by not your cricket name, but but by your FPL name, which is another weird thing, but amazing. And you're very famous for, and I always enjoy your posts because I love fixtures as well. Here are the transfers I'm planning in Game Week 27 if I do this transfer now, which is amazing.
Yeah. I originally started that account just to sort of slide under the radar and not be sort of too known, just sort of absorb all the content, and then started playing a bit more cricket, and I was like, I might repost that, and then reposted that, and then everyone sort of spiraled from there, and everyone went, do you play cricket? Are you this guy? I was like, no, that's not me. And then the secret was soon out. So, but now I quite like it, sort of roll with the times, because every now and then I'll get someone go, you play cricket? I'm like, yeah, that's my job. So it's quite cool. It's quite funny.
Talk to us about the catch, Brad.
I'm still trying to remember it. I'm sort of slowly fading in my memory, but no, it was probably the best night ever. It was a pretty cool experience, and definitely just the fact that we won the game in the end. It was my debut as well against our local rivals, so to have that, it was sort of just like the stars aligned, and it was one of those moments in life that hopefully remember forever and ever. I think it'd be pretty hard to replicate on a pitch nowadays.
It's hard for anyone to replicate this. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, the very older cricket followers will remember the Jaunty Road run out, the Inzamam ul Haq one, where he flew through the air, one-handed, got him run out. This is basically the catch equivalent of that. You're flying through the air, and you had to cover quite some distance to reach the ball. It's going for a 6 in a game where if it goes for a 6, Hampshire probably chase it down.
They were probably favourites, especially with Benny Howe. The way he was striking it, he was going pretty nice. So, albeit I'd still back Millsy to see us home. But it's one of them that we'll never know. But I still get stick from the lads saying that there wasn't that much ground to cover and I could have just went like that. But I think if they watched it properly, they'll see that I had to go at full tilt. So...
I think it's the greatest catch ever in cricket. Zoph, you agree?
Thank you.
Absolutely. And YouTube agrees, over 13 million views. No joke. And how's the FPL season gone so far for you, Brad?
Oh, it's sketchy, I can't lie. Normally, the last few seasons that I've had, I was 1.2k and then 2k or 1.8, I think it was. So basically, I thought that getting in the top 10k was pretty easy. Thought that this FPL life was quite sort of simple and straightforward. This year, that's been nowhere near the truth. I think I'm down to 1.2 mil. I got into the top mil in game week 10, and then I fell out last week, so I didn't have Salah. And And so I was sort of going through that Villa game, seeing Villa press on. I was like, please, I can deal with 6 points, maybe a little bit more. And then he gets the counter-attack and goal, and that just killed my rank for the week. Albeit I had the whole Saturday where all my players returned. I had Aït-Nouri, Anderson, and Mbeumo. Didn't haul, but they all returned. So I was like, up to 600k here. Hopefully Haaland can do something, scores, then he loses his bonus points. So it was a full-on roller coaster the first week of Gameweek 11, which then prompted the wild card. And I'm quite glad because it's been a very dull international break. So it's given me something to plan, something to do over these last 2 weeks.
Fantastic. Look forward to getting your views on the season, Brad. And yeah, I'm at 3 million, so I very much share your pain with that. So cool. Let's get started.
Right. So all the stats, as usual, that you will see on this podcast are from Fantasy Football Scout. And if you want to join and become a member, then the affiliate link will be in the description at the end of the video and in the comment section once we upload it. And what I wanted to say is basically, I've said in my videos in the past that we are now getting into like the big boy section or the engaged manager section, which is basically the Christmas period, the November period. And so you want data, you want to have a lot of content as well because midweek deadlines will come thick and fast. So there's a friend that's always there, which is Fantasy Football Scout.
Good. And as you guys know, the NordVPN has been a long-term partner of the FPL Wire. If you're bored of the streaming libraries in your country, with NordVPN, you can access content outside your region, get access to a wider library on your favorite streaming services, and if you're traveling outside your country, you can access your home library content. Every purchase of the 2-year NordVPN plan using the link nordvpn.com/the FPL Wire will receive an additional 4 bonus months on top. Brad, this is where we do show recommendations. What sort of shows do you like?
Shows? Well, obviously Prison Break's up there for me. Breaking Bad is also, I hate to say it, but it is becoming number one.
You know what I've been doing? I've been actually rewatching that over this international break. I skipped season 1. I went to season 2. Tuco Salamanca is just such a great character, man. He's only there for 4 episodes.
It's so good. That, and then I like Power. I rewatched Lost for the second time because it's recently come back on Netflix. So I rewatched that and loved it. So I really do recommend that. But yeah, I'm a bit of a sucker for sort of like the Criminal Mastermind kind of like series, I guess. So escaping from prison, cooking meth. So apparently that's how my brain's wired. So it's not quite the best, but makes for good TV.
What about you, Pras? What have you been doing over IB?
I mean, I've they had these new episodes of what is this show, man? Cobra Kai. So I finished that. And there's this girl in that who is US based, but basically she's of Asian origin, like South Asian origin. She's an incredible taekwondo. She has like 4 black belts. I'm in awe of her. Like I've been watching her TikTok videos like after watching the show for a long time. This hasn't got to do with NordVPN at all, but I just wanted to shout out her name, and it will come to me. But other than that, nothing much else. Like. Just watched From, which is like almost so Brad, the same guys who made Lost have made another show called From.
Okay.
And so that's like on its penultimate show of season 3, and so that one is also coming to an end next week.
Nice.
So
I think there's also that The Day of the Jackal that's new on Sky. So I want to get that. Just Eddie Redmayne, I think. So that's that looks good.
That's decent. I've seen 3 episodes, a few left, but pretty decent so far.
No spoilers.
Yeah, no spoilers. So Nord also has an efficient anti-malware and anti-spyware protection tool. It highlights any attack and deletes it before it makes a mess of your computer. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/the FPL Wire. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Sign up using the link in the description below. So guys, first let's start with the whole heavy hitter discussion, Brad. Now we are going to be making this a more wildcard specific episode, but it will not be all about the wildcard, right? We will be talking about game week 12, but I think the theme of this season, Brad, has been the heavy hitters, right? With the way the pricing is. Where are you on the whole Haaland, Salah dilemma, premiums, etc.?
I started with Haaland and I had Haaland, and my original plan was to try and wildcard in Gameweek 18 because it is, and I've learned this from the wildcard research, it is quite a dull period from sort of 12 to 17. There are no real sort of standouts to say, but I can't justify the money on Haaland at the moment. It's so much. When I look at the comparisons of like the three players that it would take for sort of like a Haaland, Smith Rowe and Semenyo versus sort of Bruno and Buemo, Jackson kind of thing, I don't think it weighs up. So yeah, it's probably a little bit of a spoiler, but it's no Haaland for me at the moment.
Plus, you're still in concurrence. What about the hat-trick over international break? That give you any worries?
More than a hat-trick. He got 4 goals and one assist, I think, over the 2 games. But yeah, one of the games against Kazakhstan was a hat-trick. Look, I think the thing is, Haaland probably scores the most points, and we say this in every pod. He probably scores the most points between now and 18. I think the change for wildcarders now, why it's difficult to squeeze him in as well as others, is because there's a lot of mid-priced midfielders and strikers that are putting their hand up. So whether that is Isak, whether that is Bruno, and then when you add to the fact that Saka, Palmer, Salah also have good fixtures, you can just make a team with all of them except Haaland. Now, the biggest flaw of those teams is no Haaland, but in the Haaland teams, the flaw will be you'll probably miss 2 or 3 of those guys that I've just talked about. And this isn't even considering getting Trent later or getting double Arsenal defense and things like that. So I just think money is tight and there's a lot of good players in the game. And the delta between Haaland and the next tier of 4-5 players is not so high when he's not captainable every week.
So we're recording this on Tuesday evening. We still don't have any news on Saka yet. There are few international games left, but more or less they're all completed. So Brad, in terms of your premiums, which 2 or 3 are you favoring right now?
Well, Salah and Palmer are dead set nailed in my team. The Chelsea fixtures are unbelievable, and you'll see that the problem that is giving me later on. And then Salah is Salah. I watched, sent to Pras earlier, I watched the above average stream the other day, and I just couldn't believe the numbers that he was putting up and how easy it is for him to not only get sort of like a return, it's the bonus on top, and the double-digit hauls are just flying in. So those 2 are dead set nailed. I've got a bit of a love affair with Saka. I started the season with him. I enjoyed the sort of tick-along returns, the odd assists from corners, and then the haul against Southampton. But I'm really at a tricky turning point with Saka because I don't think the next 4 fixtures are that good from an attacking point of view. Forest, one of the best defences in the league. Fulham away is not easy. I know West Ham have been poor, but I know they went there last year and won like 6-0 or something, didn't they? So that could be a little bit of a touchy one. But and then United, I mean, hopefully Amarin can sort them out. But so I'm stuck on those next 4. But you can just sort of set and forget Saka, and he will tick along. And we can afford him, so it's tricky, but that's sort of my major headache at the moment, really, Saka.
Yeah, because even if he's fit, what I've noticed is we have the fixture schedule also now coming up. It's a very busy time coming up for Arsenal, and they're obviously not safe in their Champions League. I guess nobody is safe. They've not been doing too well, but they pretty much have a midweek game, including the Carabao Cup, pretty much all the way till January. So even if Saka is fully fit, you'd expect some sort of game management minutes here, right? Pras, where are you on that?
I mean, look, I think the midweek thing is true for top 8 teams, right? And now there is no respite. Like they have to play midweek every time. And I think the only exception to that is Man City, who are out of the Carabao Cup. Like whoever's still in the Carabao Cup, now there could be rotation there. But apart from that, Europe, yeah, there will be games. I think what we need to look at it as, look, Saka is going to tick along and you don't know which fixture he'll do well. And my perspective is if you have him, then you're not going to get rid of him for months, right? I mean, he's going to be fine. He probably plays 95% of the games and maybe gets an odd earlier substitution. But again, for me, his minutes are no different to a Saka or a Haaland, sorry, a Salah or a Haaland. But if he's coming back from injury, we don't know, right? If it was an IB injury, if it was a proper injury, we'll hear back, not from Arteta, but from other people, if he's in training or if he's been, sort of looking back. I think he's an easy okay if you have him. But also if you don't have him, I do understand that there are, you want to have a midfield which has a Mbeumo, Bruno, Salah, Palmer, and maybe a cheaper. And so he doesn't really fit in that. But I do also think that by game week 14, when Bumo and Bruno both have difficult fixtures, then you'll probably want Saka back. So it's what you go with. Like, I would definitely have Saka on my wildcard, but I am a huge Saka fanboy.
And of course, it's going to be very difficult to determine because Arteta is always going to say he's in contention. You're not going to get any sort of clarity from that. And I think Brad's point is interesting as well. We don't know how Manchester United are going to be. Out of the next four, I would say West Ham is probably the most appealing fixture.
Yes, definitely. Definitely.
So what do you think of Pras about covering that with somebody like a Havertz? I use the word cover loosely, right? But we are talking about like 90 minutes, etc. over the next few periods. The fixtures are there for goals. What do you think about that?
No, Havertz I don't like at all. I think what you can do is not have him and then plan to get him. Because if you go for a Havertz structure and a double defense, then you're stuck. Like, then you're not changing that for a while. So what doesn't sit right with me is until game week 21 or the foreseeable future that Saka doesn't make my team, because I expect, if you looked at the trajectory of Saka, he's gone from 160, 180, 200, 220. He's on a 230, 240 point season if he's on the same trajectory. So while Havertz is a great pick, I just don't think he replaces Saka. I think Havertz needs to be compared with Solanke, with Isak. So if you think Havertz is better than those, go for Havertz. But I don't think the cover argument works. Like, I would then just say don't get Saka or Havertz, get Isak, because I think Isak is better than Havertz. And then just wait for the right window to get Saka, because there will be one once you want to sell. Maybe you want to sell Bruno, maybe you want to sell Mbumo. And so that will be a window.
What's your thoughts, Brad, on Havertz?
Joe, I completely agree. Again, having watched the bonus points stream, Havertz is pretty low on that. And so you're not going to see the 9 pointers from him, or necessarily like the 12 with a goal and assist. So, and also not ruling out that Havertz could slot back in midfield. With the Ben White injury, obviously, if Partey moves back to right back, you could see a midfield again of Rice, Ødegaard, Havertz. So, yeah, I'm leaving it. And I also think that there's like 4 or 5 better strikers in João Pedro, Cunha, Isak, Jackson. So yeah, I'm not too fussed by Havertz, to be honest.
Makes sense. I like those reasons you guys mentioned. Now, Pras, could we just sum up the whole Salah stuff from the bonus point spot? I think he's got 21 bonus this season, 25 in his 303 years, something like that.
So he's already at the bonus level, which he got in all of the season 3 years ago, and about 70% the way through in the seasons past. So basically, he's getting the benefit, number one, of better underlying, because he's taking shots. He usually takes shots and they're usually on target. Like, he's not a misser, right? He's not a Jackson so usually he'll take a few shots, but they'll be on target. So that's a plus. He gets fouled a lot. He's losing the ball a lot less. So basically, on an underlying data or a baseline bonus data perspective, he's like 2x of what he used to do, because the bonus rules have changed. And then you also add to the fact that his goal involvement, which would be typically 30 to 40% for pretty much any player, he's running at 50 to 60% at the moment. Whether that it normalizes in the future, we will see. You would expect it to come down below 50%, but at the moment, he's involved in 50% of Liverpool's goals. So it feels like he's getting this double bonus of he's getting more goals and assists, and for those, he's getting more rewarded. And we looked at a couple of examples where Liverpool were playing. In some of them, he would still have gotten 3 bonus, like the Arsenal game where they drew 2-2, but just by a margin, right? Had he lost one possession or had he got a yellow card, he would have in previous seasons not got 3 bonus.
The margin is
but
low.
Here, it was like he was the clear. And there was another game that we looked at where he wouldn't have been in the bonus, but now he got 2 bonus. So basically, Salah, and by the way, Saka was the same in that analysis. Son was the same. So there was this theme of these talismanic players that are taking some shots, who are now getting better at dribbling and don't lose possession as much, are more involved in the goals. They're just bonus point machines now.
Right. Let's talk Palmer. I think we can sum it up by saying in terms of heavy hitters right now, Salah and Palmer are almost must-haves. Palmer with the fixtures and the captaincy. Would you guys agree? And you sort of build your team around that?
Yeah, those two have been in literally every draft, and it's not even a question. That Chelsea run is just so good, and for such a long period of time. And I think we're pretty confident on Palmer's minutes, albeit Chelsea got such depth that they could rotate, but they're just not going to rotate with that. And obviously Palmer's not going to play anything in the Conference League, so whilst others might be having 3 games a week, Palmer's going to be at max 2 really.
Let's talk
Agreed.
captaincy, I guess, while we are here. This is primarily down to those two guys, right? This week, Salah is away to Southampton, Palmer away to Leicester, both up against promoted teams. Where are you leaning, Brad?
I'm a bit of a sucker for EO, so Salah will be my captain, and I'm not even going to think too much more about it. I think I heard Ross say something I thought was very interesting. He said if someone came away with a 10-pointer and someone came away with a 25-pointer, you would probably presume that the 25-pointer was Palmer. So he does have the ability to go absolutely nuclear, but I don't know. I don't think Leicester are that bad at their place. I also do think that Southampton are pretty bad, and if Ramsdale and Bednarek are missing, then I think it's a no-brainer. Plus, you've got Gandhi to contend with if you go for Palmer, so you can sort of delay the pain of maybe a captaincy blank if you chuck it on Salah on the Sunday.
Yep, I think that's well summarized. I think the ceiling obviously is higher with the Chelsea player because we are more likely to score those 4 or 5. You'd expect Liverpool to win something like 2 or 3, but I think this was a point you made with the whole Villa thing, plus on the previous pods. If Liverpool score, let's say 2 or 3, you'd expect Salah to be involved in at least 2 of those, which lies true for
This is
Palmer.
true of Palmer as well, though.
I know. I was going to say that, but like again, I think Salah does feel like the more secure option. I think the more reliable option in this case.
I think it's the Saturday Sunday factor as well. So apart from the whole early kickoff things, getting one more day, international break, whether it's in my head, I've not seen any empirical evidence, but it feels like the results are more unpredictable the week after the game week after international breaks, because the coaches don't have the time with the players. They have not set themselves up as much. If you're having an away game, then your players come in on Wednesday, you're traveling on a Friday. And so it feels like the games are more unpredictable. So basically, it's about backing the team that is playing a little bit later. In Liverpool's case, it's a day later, who are a slightly better team. So Chelsea are a slightly better team Liverpool are a slightly better team than Chelsea, playing a worse team. Southampton are a worse team than Leicester. And that's really it. But I think it's close. Like if you wanted to go for a little bit of, free risk or somebody who you're captaining who's different because you're chasing a little bit, I don't mind it. I think Palmer and Salah are going to be in the conversation pretty much most weeks now going forward.
Let's talk Haaland a little bit. Let's say now there are people out there who obviously still don't own Salah. Do you guys think you make the move this week? Because you have to think about in the fixtures for Salah over the next, after this, right? Sort of go a little bit south, Man City, Newcastle, Everton, where Haaland has your Nottingham and Palace, right? So in terms of captaincy, do you like Haaland versus a Palmer in that sense? Because again, Spurs might be without Romero.
I think you have to make your bed. It's a very difficult one. Like, get very uncomfortable telling people to sell Haaland, right? Because any day you can look like an idiot, any game week. And so the window to do it was 2 weeks ago, then last week. Not because Salah did points and Haaland didn't do points, because Salah was clearly the best captain 2 weeks ago. Not clearly, but he was somewhat ahead of Haaland 2 weeks ago. He was slightly ahead last week. This week, I think he's even less slightly ahead. And so therefore, the window to do it makes less and less sense. Next week, they play each other. Now, you can still argue next week, Salah at home is better than Haaland away to Liverpool, right? Home to Man City is slightly better than away to Liverpool. Then game week 14, Haaland is the better captain than Salah. And I think that's quite a bit better because Haaland is home to Nottingham Forest, Salah is away to Newcastle. So this is the point you're making. In the next 3, there is no clear argument to say that you should sell Haaland over Salah. I think it's a structure thing. Like if people are doing it, don't do it because Salah is better than Haaland. Do it because maybe you can sell Haaland, get a cheaper attacker, and then upgrade not only one midfielder to Salah, maybe afford a Palmer or afford a Bruno. And then your structure becomes a lot better long term. But this week, Haaland is great, man. Like, Spurs are there for the taking.
That's true. Brad, where are you on this? I know you're on wildcard, obviously, so the decision, I would say I would agree, go without Haaland. But let's say for somebody who has to take a hit this week, right? Somebody who's been on the bad end of variance, just frustrated with, I need to get Salah now, Haaland isn't doing, etc. Do you think you make the move for free transfers or for a hit this week to captain Salah?
It's really tough because I had the same conundrum in game week 11 and I could have taken the -4 to get Salah. I decided against it. I feel like hits this year are even sort of more, I don't know, you want to avoid them, I feel like, because of the rolling transfers. But so I didn't press the button. And had I actually got Salah in, it would have meant that I could have kept my wild card in my back pocket still. So for those that don't have a wild card, I do not envy your decision, because like we're sort of alluding to here, it's such a 50-50 split decision. And there's going to be a lot of hindsight bias of, well, Haaland did haul and Salah blanked. Well, obviously you should have kept the best player in the game. And it could be completely the other way around. So I'm sorry, but I'm gonna sit on the fence and not have your viewers come in for me first time round, if that's all right.
That we understand. We won't sit on the fence, Pras. I'll give my recommendation first. I think you get rid of Haaland. I think just going forward, you can do the Salah Palm. I think the pain is going to be there this week when you sell good players. It's going to happen. But I think in terms of a long-term strategy, it just makes sense because the upgrades you can get elsewhere in terms of Isak, Bruno, because I'm jealous of your moves this week, Pras. You can always bring in like good blue chip assets with the money you have floating around versus a constrained structure like mine where you have 3 premiums. So again, Pras, your opinion.
I'm of a similar opinion, but you need to find your window to do it. Like, I can also understand people who, like, there's people like you and LR, right? Who have the 3 guys. Like, people are selling Haaland because they want either Palmer or Salah. Like, they're desperate for those 2. I don't think any other player we should have that much FOMO that you should be going, oh, I must sell Haaland for, right? Even Isak, right? I mean, even if you're able to do Haaland to Isak and another mid-priced midfielder for anybody other than Palmer or Salah, I don't really think that's worth it. So that's the only reason why I think you should do it. If you already have Salah, if you already have Palmer, and you have Haaland, I think it's an easy wait a week and then next week jump on something else, or even potentially hold. Like from next week, like you mentioned, maybe people will say, I've held Haaland this long, maybe I'll sell Salah instead. Like I was looking at Flapjack and he posted, he's got a similar structure to you guys. He was saying next week, I'll just sell Salah and I'll keep Haaland because everybody else is doing the opposite. It's not like Haaland is not going to score points. You're still spreading the money. You're just spreading slightly less money because Salah is 13 million, Haaland will be 15 million. So 2 million less you're spreading. That's not that inflexible.
Spot on. Anything else on the heavy hitters, guys? Should we move to defense? All good, yeah? Let's get
Did you consider Son at all, Brad? Like any Spurs assets? I know they have a difficult fixture this week, but what did you think of Son or Solanke or anyone else?
I've had Brennan Johnson since the Brighton game, I think, and then I've had Van der Ven all season, and it's so Spursy, isn't it? They're so hot and cold, like the 1-0 to Palace, 2-1 at home to Ipswich. Like you think they're sort of banker games, and to be honest, I was looking forward to having Johnson away to City. He'd have still been in my team had I not wildcarded. I thought the fixture run was okay up until 17, and then obviously that was the plan. So I'm staying away. I don't think the consistency's there. I think for Son's price, I would still rather Palmer, Saka, and even like the City boys with De Bruyne coming back, and Foden's got 3 90s in a row now. So I think his points will pick up. I think the alternatives to Son for cheaper are a lot better than the other teams of sort of like your Savios, Bernardos of City, and then like Martinelli's and stuff. So yeah, I think I've left Spurs. Not even thought about them once really.
And Watkins, last one.
Yeah, Watkins minutes with Duran. I think there's enough cover with Rodgers, albeit I quite like the little split shout out that he got on the other pod saying that what does he actually do for FPL, because he just seems to be a great player, but he's had a few jammy returns, but I'm going to stick with him. I think there's those 3 home fixtures in the next 4. There is a draft where I do sell him later down the line and look to move to an ESR, but I think Rodgers is enough Villa cover for me. I've also had him and Konsa for the whole of the year already, so there's a little bit of knowing what I get with Villa anyway. Yeah,
Watkins probably is the one that appeals to me a little bit. Like I see everybody going for Isak. Now, if Isak didn't have West Ham this week, I think I'd be a lot more tempted by Watkins, who also has Crystal Palace at home, because I think in Game Week 15, he's the best captain, home to Southampton. Like Haaland is away to Crystal Palace, Saka is away to Fulham, Salah is away to Everton. Now, Salah is fine away to Everton, but home to Southampton, we've seen this year, is the money game, right? So I was a little bit tempted, and now Isak and Watkins, I think the price difference is only 0.5. So people thinking about it, like if they have the structure, maybe it works, but then having Rodgers and Watkins doesn't work so well because both play away to Chelsea next week, and I probably have to play them. So yeah, Watkins was tempting.
Let's talk Bruno while we are here. Where are you on the whole Bruno Fernandes thing, Brad? Because it's been a divisive thing within the community, right? You see a lot of the heavily analytics guys being Bruno is God, other guys being Bruno's are rubbish. Where are you? In general, tell me what are your thoughts pre and post Ten Hag.
I've spoken to a couple of United fans on Twitter about it all, and I do think like he will be quite low in EO. So if I don't have it, and I'm not going to miss out on too much, but there is definitely the opportunity to gain with him. Albeit I just think it is a 2-week punt and that's it. The next 3, even if Amarin does start like a house on fire, I don't see a massive amount of goals and returns in those 3 fixtures. So it would be a sell. And even Bournemouth, it's Bournemouth in 17. So I can't have Bruno for that and back against Bournemouth. So I do think we'll go there and we'll put up a fight, even if they do start well. I mean, beaten 3-0 last year, not to bang that door again. But yeah, he's so tempting for me because I think Ipswich and Everton, there is just the upside there. He is in, I think he's probably in 50% of my like 3 or 4 go-to drafts. But in all of them, he's sold in 14. So he's a tricky one. He's still a TBC in my drafts at the moment.
Right. We'll talk about that. It's been interesting. I think you're set on about like 10 or 11 of your spots, right? We'll keep that a bit for the end. But let's talk about defense. I think this is potentially the most interesting part of it. I think the spots are really up for grabs. We have some images here from our friends at FPL Under the Radar. Let's start first with goalkeepers. How do you generally lead, Brad? Do you have a perma play guy you like to play every week, or you are a rotator?
I'm a sucker for rotation because I enjoy being able to have a decision every week on who I want to play. I think it's really engaging for myself. I'd also like to think that this sort of next period now, like Pras was making jokes earlier, looking at transfers in Gameweek 27, but I was just sort of a brief look to the chip strategy that we would look to employ later in the season. And obviously, we don't know what the mystery chip's going to be, but roughly speaking, we've got the blank game week in 29, and then the chips are going to come out really quickly from sort of the early 30s, basically. So this next period could be 20 weeks without a wild card. So for me, I want a little bit of insurance. So I have got rotating keepers, and I have spent a decent amount of money, but it's still cheaper than what a Raya and Fabianski or an Alisson and a Fabianski hold. So I don't see the issue with spending big on goalkeepers. So yeah, I like the rotation.
So spoiler alert.
I love you. Talking about game week 33 already.
Yep. So spoiler alert, you've got right now Sanchez and Verbruggen. That's not too different from, let's say, a Raya every week, right? I think it's what, like 0.2, 0.3? That's it?
Yeah, so it's 9.2 for Verbruggen and Sanchez, and then you'd be, 9.5 for Ryan Fabianski?
9.6, I think, right? Because I think
we are hoping every night.
Yes,
he's
we're hoping for it. Not yet.
99.9 to drop on price changes. Yeah, I think he will drop before the deadline. I don't know. It's wildcard week, so the price changes a little bit off, aren't they? But
Pras, where are you on the goalkeepers? If you were building today, what would you go for?
See, I think this chart is really nice because you want to be as top right as possible, right? So, and the only guys who are even close to top right are Raya and Sanchez. And so with Sanchez, you give up a little bit of, defensive credibility, but you gain a little bit of saves per 90. And that's what the chart is showing. And Pope is the same. But Pope, I still have trust issues. Sanchez, I have minutes issues. And so then you come into
competency issues. He's rubbish.
And competency issues. So which translate into minutes issues. Yeah. So then the only other two that I had in my mind are Alisson and Verbruggen, and maybe Kepa. So these are the guys that have good fixtures, are either cheap or work, are keepers for an elite team. So between Raya and Alisson, this chart tells me that, they're good, both good defenses. Raya makes slightly more number of saves just because of the way Arsenal set up. You can see a lot of games where teams get frustrated and take shots. And so Raya gets these easy saves, a bit like Flecken does, but on a smaller level. And so I think Raya is good. At the premium level, he's good. But not everybody has the team value or the appetite to go double defense. I think in that case, it's between Verbruggen and Sanchez. So pick your poison in terms of if you think Brighton defense is actually going to get a lot better, because Brighton have had a lot. I mean, they've basically played all the tough teams. So now their fixtures are good for the foreseeable. If you have faith that Verbruggen moves more to the right in this chart, then he's similar to a Sanchez and he's cheaper. If you have faith that basically Sanchez keeps his place, then I think he's the one to go for. So these are the guys who would be under my scrutiny. But I completely agree with Brad, where you need to start when games come thick and fast, right? One injury to a player who is a week out means 3 game weeks out. So every injury becomes like a transfer out. It's very difficult to cope when injuries pile on and keep players on your bench because it just comes so thick and fast. And so what everybody needs to be doing now is making their teams more robust. And so having a Sanchez, that's why is a no-go for me, is I just cannot deal with a scenario in which he misses a game and then I have to use one of those transfers there as opposed to somewhere else. I want to basically be done with my double Arsenal defense, which I don't want to touch for the foreseeable unless there's an injury. And therefore, that's a transfer I want to make and be done with it. I don't want to touch it again. Similar thinking for other transfers that I'd be making. But for goalkeepers, this is why Raya remains my number 1 pick.
Don't you think the save percentage might drop a little bit as the fixtures get easier, the opposition get easier? Because what we saw, a lot of these saves are actually from the first few games where they had those red cards. A lot of them are against City. Don't you think his saves will drop down, which in turn which lead to bonus, etc., also going down?
Could do. He could become a 7 point keeper. But then it's very hard to predict who will be the 4 to 5 point keeper. Like if Raya gives me on average 1 point more than the keeper that I would have picked, it's not great. But the problem is if you pick a 4.5 keeper, it's not sure that he will give you that same guarantee, right? I mean, there's a little bit of guarantee with Raya where you will know that he will get you 150 points in the season, over the season. But if you go for a Sanchez, he could be dropped. If you go for Verbruggen, Brighton could be absolutely rubbish. I mean, we've all had our horror stories with keepers who frustrate us, do nothing. And so if you told me there's a 4.7, 4.5 keeper that has good potential and I can back, and I will probably be right, I think the only one that I trust right now is Cells, based on the fixtures that we've seen at the moment. But I think their fixtures are so bad that I wouldn't go there now. Maybe Leno, like how much is Leno? He's 5 million. So I wouldn't. So I'm not seeing a keeper here at 4.5 to 4.7 where I can completely, with more faith, back them over the long term. So Raya becomes the lazy, easy option.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the fixtures are great for Arsenal. We have a ticker up here now for the night, all the way up to Game Week 20. Arsenal right on top. Brighton, who I would favor really, Verbruggen with maybe Fabianski. And we don't know how long Fabianski keeps his spot. We don't know whether it was necessarily injury related or performance, because Areola did have a few mistakes in the few earlier games. So I think the fact that you have Fabianski there for now seems like too good a gift to pass up. Right now, I'd want him as my second keeper at least. How long that is viable, obviously, is up for debate. And I think if I was picking today, it would be Verbruggen. Probably just spend 9.5, 8.5, because there's just so many good attackers I want.
Fair enough. But then what will happen is people will get tempted to double up and get a Timber or a Saliba. So then I have to compare a Verbruggen and a Saliba versus a Raya and a Dunk or a Van Heck. And I don't think there's much in it.
That's fair. Yeah, because Timber is somebody I do want to talk about as well when we get to defense. We'll talk about that. But have we changed your mind at all, Brad, on the keepers?
I do think the options have been quite poor. And I have been on Verbruggen and Sanchez for pretty much since the start of last week. Their rotation is phenomenal and genuinely takes you up to 29 so comfortably. I just wanted to make 1 point on Kepa. Obviously, not many people are going to go for him, but there's a lot of noise around the Bournemouth fans that we want Travers starting. Travers played really well in those couple of games against City and Villa. And then Kepa came in and had a bit of a stinker at Brentford last week, obviously. The goal at the near post, so not saying that people will, but it honestly it ruled out Bournemouth keepers as an option for wildcard, and the other options like Sells, fixtures weren't there. Leno didn't really work with another 4.5, and it was just too much money. So yeah, all the options were pretty stinky, to be honest. So yeah, Verbruggen and Sanchez almost picked themselves for me, and I didn't want the hassle with Fabianski. I know he would be a second choice, but I'm not that confident. Lopetegui's not far from the sack either, so if he gets sacked, someone might prefer Areola. So they actually got like a ball-playing manager come in. I think Areola's slightly better with his feet than Fabianski's a bit more sort of old school, save it and lump it long. So pretty easy decision really for me.
As a Chelsea fan, I know what you're talking about, Kepa. He'll pull out 2 or 3 wonder saves, but then there's a howler right around the corner.
Yeah, he's been all right, but yeah, I mean, Travers is sort of one of the younger lads that's come through the squad and had to sort of be a bit more patient. So I think he's got a bit more leeway with the fans, whereas Kepa's on loan and supposedly this world record keeper. So I think there's a bit more expectation around him.
I don't want to put you off the Chelsea keeper too much, but I guess the one positive you can spin on that is Chelsea don't really have an upside defender. All our guys you look at, the fullbacks are rotation risk, and Colville, etc., don't really have that upside. So he is potentially the best entry from that sense. I get it, but I'm still not confident on our defense yet. But the fixtures are there, so I get the point that you are making.
I mean, his baseline bonus was good. I think the saves will still be there, and actually the fixtures, because of the rotation, the fixtures that I'm playing him in, I mean, if he doesn't get clean sheets, I'm going to be so annoyed at him. But they're keepers at the end of the day, so it's a bit of a lottery, isn't it?
But have a look, Brad. I mean, I haven't looked at your draft if you have a third Arsenal already, but like even until game week 28, like Arsenal are like second in the ticker. Their toughest away game until game week 28 is maybe Forest away. Like they don't play anyone that is tough. And so, okay, they play Brighton away as well. So I think those are the two. And like they are good for a while. Like it's only 0.4 more. You don't have to have the headache of choosing which keeper to play each week. Have a think. Like I would strongly urge you to think about it if you have the team value, or just go for one, man. Like even Brighton are like until game week 28 are fantastic for a while. Like there's only maybe 2 fixtures where you don't want to play him. Maybe the Arsenal home game in game week 20, maybe the Villa away game.
But even those, he could rack up save points and come away with 4 points, whereas someone to have an easy fixture can see 2 saves and it's 2 points, and you're like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense. I've had the easier fixture, but slightly less points. But hopefully over the long run, there's some benefit to it, but it could be a way.
You say 0.7 on going Verbruggen plus 4.0, which feels a lot. Like it doesn't. You may not need it now. You'll definitely need it 5 to 6 weeks. So, I mean, not to change your mind. We're not here to change your mind, but just to debate these positions.
Yep. My problem with the rotating keepers is you always get these hauls for the tougher fixtures keeper, like that Flecken 12.2, it was just around the corner. You will get these odd games where they just keep the clean sheet you don't expect. And those are the ones you get very annoyed. I just hate seeing those 10 or 11 points stuck on my bench. Completely ruins my weekend. But
there's another low-key shout, which people will hate right now, but in 2 weeks, more people will do it, is Areola and Fabianski. Because West Ham actually, after 2 weeks, are good.
But so, I want a manager change there, Pras. It doesn't seem right to me. Maybe
it's a bit like people who bought Bruno, right? Now they look very smart. Even though it was not a great move to buy Bruno while Ten Hag was there, but now they have Bruno already in place. A bit like that. So you're almost either you expect an improvement in results or a manager to change. Both of them are good.
Cool. Let's talk defenders and let's talk Timber first. Right, I think somebody we're all looking at. The news we've heard that Ben White has had surgery and he's out for about 6 to 8 weeks. So that's pretty much should see Timber start most games at right back now up to January. But do you guys think that Partey is potentially a threat to his minutes, Pras?
I mean, threat means maybe does he play right back 1 out of 5 games or 1 out of 8 games? Maybe, yeah. Especially if games come thick and fast. Timbers had, last year he was out. This year also he's had a couple of niggles. Do I expect him to play 90 minutes every single game? No. So this is why when I heard of the Timber appeal, I just don't see it. Like if he was 5 million or 4.5 and you go, okay, he's like Rico Lewis, right? Even if he doesn't start, I get some upside. Now with Rico Lewis, we didn't get it, but with Timber, we might get it. But when he's the same price as Raya, when he's only 0.5 less than Saliba, unless you're absolutely desperate for team value, like I just don't know why you would go there, why you would save that money. If you're at the point where you only have 5.5 to spend and you want to get an Arsenal defender, I understand it. But it's like, you're spending you're spending on a Porsche, but you're not going to pay for the wheels. Like, just get Saliba.
That's interesting because then again, Saliba I think he hasn't got any bonus points this season and he's not had a single shot on goal. But I think Timber, you do get some sort of attacking upside as well. What are your thoughts, Brad?
I just can't. I've toyed around with the idea. I've had a couple of like slightly cheaper front eights in my wildcard, and it has allowed for I've had 2 defenders set and forget in my wildcard, and then that third one has the potential to be Timber, but I still looked at it, and again, alluding to the dilemma with my keepers of having money later down the line, I just didn't see the value in Timber. And would it surprise you if Ben White was back in 6 weeks? I know that could still be like 8 game weeks, but yeah, I just think it's a bit of a headache and potentially a transfer waiting down the line. So it could be nice, but it's just an avoid for me. I'm going to play it a bit safer on that one.
Yeah, from what I can tell, you're a very X-minute secure manager, Brad.
I don't know. I've got one draft that is just like pretty template, pretty boring. Like if I had 10 minutes to pick it, that would be what I would pick. But I like to create like a little bit of danger and trouble down the line for me. I don't want just like 90-minute penalty takers. I want like a Jackson or a Darwin just to sneak in there and give me some rage over the weekend because they've missed 3 open goals or something. So, but yeah, largely, especially over this period, it is sort of where I can try and make some ground back. So the minutes guys will be king.
So
and also, Zoph, the point. Sorry, the point on Timber is also like it's the same price as Konate now, right? So like just go there then.
But the fixtures are so much better for Arsenal, and he has attacking upside. I still can't with Konate, and let's talk Konate a little bit also in this discussion. I'm still not convinced about his minutes. I think the previous few seasons he never started, at least under Klopp, 3 games in a row. He always used to sit out the midweek game. So I know this season has been different, but over this period I still have trust issues. Maybe that's completely wrong.
I'm not. He's clear. Like his competition is now Gomez. Like he hates Konza. Like Konza started that cup game. He started making that mistake and he was taken off on the 93rd minute. I don't know if you remember that, but he hates Konza, and so I think he's just found a way to use him where he's not utilizing as much energy. He's not doing as much up and down, which basically maybe impacts his goal threat. Not that he was bombing forward, but even in corners, maybe he's conserving his energy. He's clearly first choice. Like he's going to play the same number of games as Timber. Like if I was to now project over the Christmas period, he misses 1 or 2 games, but so does Timber. So this is why I think it's a good like-for-like comparison with him and in Timber. And in terms of fixtures, when I look at Liverpool, okay, Man City and Newcastle as 2 of the next 3 don't appeal, but after that, it's a very, very good fixture. And like Spurs away in Gameweek 17, but they have shown themselves to be a really, really elite defense. Like I don't see a huge issue going Konate if you wanted to lock up a spot and keep it for the long term.
Where are you on that, Brett?
I'm siding completely with Pras. Do you know what? With Liverpool, I started with Trent for the season. I really enjoyed the clean sheets, but the lack of obviously attacking returns meant that he had to go. But I think you look at Liverpool's like Champions League results. They've gone to I think it's only Milan that they've conceded in the Champions League, and they just seem to lock down games so easily. And going back to the game week 14, Liverpool go to Newcastle. The fixtures in 14 for the good teams, there are some like weaker teams that play each other. The clean sheet odds will be very low in game week 14. I actually think that Liverpool will have still one of the highest clean sheet odds in that week. And so I'm looking at playing Konate just because I feel like Liverpool can. They could go there. I don't feel like that would be like a 2-3 kind of 2-2 kind of game. So I do see sort of like a 1-0, maybe a 1-1. And I think that Konate is so nailed on. I think from the research that we had from Slot at the start of the year, it was that he didn't quite like to rotate that much. So I think we saw that even like with staying true to sort of the midfield 3. I can't see him changing a centre-back pairing. If Konate was like a fullback with the same competition, then yes, maybe I could see some rotation through the busy period. But I think with centre-backs, you want to keep that back 5 as solid and in sort of a routine as much as possible. So I genuinely can see him and Van Dijk playing 37, 38 games this year if all things go well for them.
Solid argument. So let's start whittling down the choices. Was Gabriel the first name you picked?
Yeah, he was. He's been in since game week 1 as well. He was Guardiola until about an hour or so before, and then I suddenly went, I back Arsenal, so swapped them around, and I've had him ever since. But yeah, those two, I think, put a pretty strong argument there forward for Konate. Maybe a bit of bias, but those two have just not left any of the drafts at all. And then I've sort of plugged 3 cheaper guys to sort of rotate through with them.
Who are the 3 cheaper guys you're looking at? And now, at the time of recording, we don't have clarity on the Manchester United situation, which I think all of us are monitoring. Because one thing, he's come out and said that he will be playing 3-4-3. So we do want entry into one of the wing backs. If you had to punt now, would you go there, and which one?
So my 3, I found it pretty hard to ignore another Brighton defender just because of how well he sort of includes with Gabriel and Konate. So I've got Van Heck. From what I'm reading, I think there's a guy on Twitter, FPL Instructors, something like that. He's a Brighton fan. Yeah, that's him. So he said, I think he's going to put something out a bit later, but the way he's talking in the comments as well, he says Estepinian's not worth 0.5. Just getting nailed on Van Heck, and actually that Van Heck's more nailed than Dunk because of Igor being left-footed as well. So Van Heck's sort of been the guy. Veltman, I'm a little bit unsure if Kadioglu, Estepinian, Dunk, if they're all fit at the same time, I could see Kadioglu playing at right back. So Veltman, and there's no attacking threat really with Veltman. I think you're more likely to get a header from Van Heck. So he's been in. And then it's Martinez from United and Joaquin Anderson from Fulham, who will be a bit out there. But he was actually my transfer in game week 10, I think, for Ben Johnson. And then he kept a clean sheet and got a bonus point. So those 3 actually work in really well with Gabriel and Konate for, again, going Uber planning here. It's the next 10 weeks.
5 centre backs. I love you, Brad.
Yeah, it is a little bit. I looked at it, and do you know, I've really tried to get Hall, Ait Nouri, and Kirkes, but I look at it and I'm like, I don't trust the defences as much. And with the rotate, I love rotation clearly because I've got the keepers as well. I think with the rotation, I think you can still keep up with the clean sheets, albeit there's obviously been less, but 2 out of the 3 of my players most week are going to be from Arsenal and Liverpool. So clean sheets will come. And I think the assists, again, not to keep repeating the pod, but the assist numbers for defenders and fullbacks in general are really, really low. And so you only need 1 goal to every 2 assists. Yes, you could get bonus points from both the games, but I think defenders are scoring lower than ever. So why not have a 4.5, 4.4, 4.3? And if they are centre-backs, they're centre-backs. But again, hopefully with them being centre-backs, they'll be nailed for 90 minutes. And who doesn't enjoy a late sort of header from a corner? So maybe there's the odd 15-pointer that can sneak in for me.
Let's talk Martinez first, Pras. Who would you be going for from Manchester United? And if you would be going there at all?
I mean, genuinely, if I had to, I haven't looked at rotation. So rotation is a different story. And with cheap guys, that's the name of the game, right? You'll see people with Man United, Aston Villa, and Fulham versus other people who have Wolves, and all of them are good picks if they can rotate well. So with that caveat, I think I would generally try to wait on Man United. There's not one fixture, away to Ipswich, we could concede very well because it's a new system, right? So anyway, you become more tight at the back as the system becomes more embedded. Look at Chelsea. They started with a very, I would say, a weak defense this season. But over time, you've seen even with Arsenal, it is getting better. So that's a team where I think the trajectory is only up. And so with Man United, we're starting at the beginning of that. And so going for a Man United defender, it's a leap of faith on this guy's going to be a wing back or he's going to get 90 minutes. Now, Martinez fits into that category where he's going to play. He's probably the best passing out of the back. He's fit and he works in that system. And he's 4.4. So cheap and good. But what will happen when you'll see Mazraoui is playing wing back and he's pretty much playing every single game as wing back, and that then changes the story where he becomes easily the best pick, even for 0.2, 0.3 more. So there's a little bit of element there, but at the same time, you can still do Martinez to Mazraoui later. So My view is if you're not on wildcard, if you're picking a defender now, just go for no one, like not even Dallo, if you have the money. And then in due course, one will emerge, whether that is a cheap Euro or Martinez, or whether that is a wing back in Dallo or Mazraoui or anyone else. We have Luke Shaw also fit now, so we will see. Even Delete is good from the back. I would for the moment I would say just don't go there.
Have you changed your mind at all, Brad, on that?
No, I'm looking at the United fixtures here on the website, and I think still with the weeks that I needed Martinez, they've got good fixtures. I actually do plan to bench him in 12, and I just pray that he's a good boy and behaves, because he is on 4 yellows. So if he's suspended for 13, I'm going to be annoyed, because Anson has a tough fixture, and obviously Konate's got City, so I don't really want to play him. If I have to, then I will. But I definitely agree. If you're not on wildcard, I think it's an easy wait to at least 17. I think Bournemouth score against United, and away to Wolves, they albeit they've been shocking, but they're decent still going forward. And then it's Newcastle, Liverpool. So that's still tricky. You could feasibly wait till 21 for a United defender. But I've got to start somewhere, and I've got to have these defenders in. And I think United have still got like the second or third most clean sheets behind Liverpool. So albeit the defence seems to be pretty shocking against the good teams, but against the bad teams where they struggled to score, they did keep it tight at the back. That might be different under Amorim, of course, but yeah, I back United to start well, so I'm going to hop on the train and start with Martinez. I pray that he doesn't get suspended. I'm hoping that he gets suspended, like picks up a yellow card against Arsenal to miss the Forest game, to then be back for the Manchester derby. That's, if I was the boss, obviously try and let him play through, but it's Martinez. He's going to do something stupid, isn't he? Come on.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of the names on this chart over here on the top right with good underlying and high CS odds. And I love the whole planning you've done with the fixture rotation. But what I generally like to do, I like to pick these attacking fullbacks and generally play them irrespective of fixture. Somebody like a Nouri, for example, and somebody who we really haven't considered probably due to past scarring is Luca Dean. Now, he picked up 3 assists for that game against France. He's been racking up the points for the numbers. I think if you look at it, Dean is the 3rd most chances created. Hall is the 4th most chances created, and the minutes look pretty secure now. Earlier in the season, we were worried, would Maatsen come in, would Hall have competition, etc. Both these guys do look to have nailed their spots. Are you tempted by that sort of strategy instead of going for these centre-backs?
I'll be honest, I have considered Villa, obviously considered Konsa a little bit, as well as Digne. Obviously, Digne stretches the budget a little bit. I've had Konsa the whole season. I've had 1 clean sheet and a goal, and that's been it. And the fixtures were good to start with as well. The rotation was fine. The thing with Digne is he does get that early sub. I can't remember what, I think it was a Bournemouth game when we scored in the last kick of the game. He got subbed and had the clean sheet already. But obviously Maatsen comes in for like Champions League sometimes, and I just feel that there is going to be a week that will probably be like the Southampton at home game. You think, yeah, great to have Digne, should be a clean sheet, maybe an attacking return, should be double-digit haul here, and he will just get benched, or he'll find a way to be Digne. They'll concede late on, he'll get booked, and you're like left with a 0-pointer, or something will happen. But in a perfect world, I think Digne would be in there. Unfortunately, we just don't live in that perfect world. I would love to get him in, but yeah, no for me on the Villa defence, unfortunately. Albeit the numbers have still been good. Their XGC is decent.
I think the great point on the fixture congestion, because like you mentioned, with midweek game weeks, with UCL, I think minutes are a bit insecure for Dean, but I'm a bit more bullish on Lewis Hall. But plus, we were having this discussion earlier this week. I think if you skip the West Ham fixture, the fixtures aren't as great for Newcastle, right? In terms of clean sheet, you have Palace away, Liverpool at home, Brentford. I mean, Palace, you could say yes, potential clean sheet. Liverpool, Brentford, then it's Leicester, Ipswich, and then Villa, Manchester United, Tottenham, which gets a bit stiffer. Maybe like 3 clean sheets over the next 8 or 9?
I would say. After West Ham, yeah, I would say 2 max. But it's like Newcastle are in this zone where you are seeing the signs of improvement, right? They've had a couple of good results. They beat Arsenal. They have had couple of good performances where you can see that, okay, the spirit is coming back. They're actually, I think, fifth in the table. So I think there is an upside pick if you go for a Newcastle player where it turns out to be better than what we think now. And when you think about it, he's 4.4. It sounds ridiculous. Like he is still fairly attacking. Sometimes even takes up, further forward positions if Joe Linton is playing in that role, which he has started to do, which is the left wing. And so, Hall will typically overlap. So I think that upside exists with the Hall type pick. So I do see it, despite the fact that there's fewer clean sheets. There's that potential that they turn into prime Newcastle from 2 years ago and they start getting clean sheets against home to Villa, and then you're basically in the money. So I get it. I think he's a good pick.
Let's talk Lewis Hall. A lot of us own him. We are frustrated with him. Now, A, do we move him on? And B, who do we look to move him on for? Let's keep the
You mean Rico Lewis?
Who did I say?
It's Hall, I think.
Oh, sorry, Hall. Sorry, yeah, Lewis.
Yeah.
Yep.
The other Lewis.
Yep. Oh, yeah, right. So, where are you that on Pras? Where do you go from Rico Lewis? Do you give him time? Because I think it's this whole December period is a minefield.
So the thing is, if I was on wildcard, I wouldn't have him. So it's quite clear. But then people who are not on wildcard are thinking, is he worth a transfer? Like if I can find a way to not play him in the next 2 weeks, then he has home Nottingham Forest, away Crystal Palace, then again a couple of tougher games, but then home Everton, away Leicester, West Ham. And yes, it's the rotation period, but with him, at least he's so cheap that you don't mind. Like if you have him, he's not an emergency sale. So like I said, I won't have him on. The problem is that a lot of us have another defender that is even worse than him. So there's a bigger problem sitting there. Like for me, after 2 weeks, like Pinnock is very good for the next 2 weeks. Not that Brentford keep any clean sheets, but again, away to Everton when it's DCL and home to Leicester is fine. Like I can play him. After that, I don't want to play Pinnock at all, ever again. And so he's
similar
the
for us
more
guys
urgent
with
transfer.
Mikalenko. It's a similar situation.
Exactly. So he becomes a more urgent sell than Rico Lewis. So therefore, Rico Lewis gets a stay of execution. But I think right now the biggest edge for wildcarders is actually to have a defense that keeps some clean sheets. Now, whether you get those or not, whether you get that upside or not, is obviously variance. But right now, most teams I see, their defenses are in tatters. Like it's not good.
So what do you like the idea of moving him on to Timber?
If that's the only money you have, like I like the fact that if you have double Arsenal defense, whichever way, I think that's a good setup because you play 4, and if half of them are Arsenal, then that's already good. Like then you've removed half the defensive weakness. You will then need eventually another transfer, right, to get your Mikolenko out to somebody else. That could be Dunk, that could be Hall, that could be somebody else. So you need 2 transfers. So if that's the structure you want to go with, that's fair enough. Also, if you don't, will you be playing Flecken? So if you're talking about your team, are you happy with Flecken for the foreseeable? Will you also need a keeper transfer eventually? I think those are things to think about. So then you're almost committing to 3 transfers in defense at some point. Do you have enough transfers to get there or not? So these are things to think about. Otherwise, just do Mikolenko to Timber.
Interesting. Where are you on this, Brad? Who do you think Lewis should go for?
I would personally downgrade. It's obviously going to be team dependent, isn't it? Whether people need to free up funds, the odd 0.1 million to sort of get Mbuemo up to Bruno, or whatever it is, maybe not that, but like, or Jackson to Isak, whatever you're trying to sort of afford. But I was quite glad I avoided the Lewis sort of bus, I guess. I sort of wasn't against people buying him because I thought there's an opportunity where this could go very wrong for people, albeit it was nervous when they were showing us pitch maps and stuff. But yeah, I reckon he is a sell. I don't see many clean sheets for City. It's such a busy period. Obviously, I've sort of looked at nailed players, and I just don't think he is that. I know he has the upside, but I think he could just be, it's like that classic meme where you keep mining until you hit the diamonds, and you just never know when that's coming for Lewis.
Yeah, but you could also do the reverse, like how I did with Solanke, right? You turn away right before you hit the goal. So there's always that fear, always with Lewis, which is similar for Haaland also, which we spoke earlier in the conversation. You're always wary of missing that. But I think I'm on board with what you are saying. I'm probably looking to downgrade him to Dunk next week, rather than move him up to Timber this week, because again, I want more minutes risk and I want some money to play around with so I can upgrade Mikolenko as well. I think that's where we are. I think that's all on defense. Let's just move to attack. Let's talk first. Big chance involvement. We have some guys on the top right over here. I think Palmer, Raul, Salah. You have usual guys. Some strange names over there. You wouldn't expect to see Rogers up there. Right now, Brad, who do you like as your fifth mid now? Do you like a Rogers or do you like a Semenyo? And you, of course, know a lot about Bournemouth. Talk to us about Semenyo. Or even Evan Nilsson. We know LR has him.
Yeah, I was talking about Sanyo to one of my mates yesterday, and we were saying about, obviously it's a pretty well-known stat now that he's got the second most shots in the league behind Haaland only. I think it's about 47, but he's had 11 on target. And we were saying, like, he is a kind of shoot-on-sight merchant. He's very two-footed as well, so he will take the defender down the line or bring him inside and sort of shoot. And it will be sort of from the corner of the box. So there'll be a lot of low XG chances with Semenyo, albeit whether they're all on target or not. So then there's the argument with the bonus. Is he always going to be up there? And we do have quite a lot of midfielders that come through with like Cliver, Dango, Tavernier, and there's so many others off the top of my head. But yeah, I am on Rodgers, and that is a little bit because I had Rodgers from the start, so he is only 5.2. I couldn't get on the Semenyo price rise earlier in the week because it would have meant selling someone else. So Semenyo is 5.7 for me. So that 0.5 just feels like a slightly leaning towards Rodgers. I think the Palace, Brentford, and Southampton fixtures are just so good. I'm actually really I'm okay with benching Rodgers when they've got Chelsea, Forest and City, I think, as well. So their rotation, I think, for my team is not too bad with Rodgers. I think if money wasn't an issue, then yeah, great. I probably would go Semenyo. But again, there's the similar sort of theme of those 4 yellow cards with Semenyo. He does a lot of pressing. He has fouled a lot, and it's just a high energy game that Bournemouth play. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Semenyo pick up that 5th booking. It could be something that's very petulant of kicking the ball away. I'd hope not from Semenyo, but I wouldn't be surprised to see the benching soon, albeit you'll know when that's coming with the 5th yellow card. So it's arguably not the worst thing, but I think owners would be pretty annoyed if that was Ipswich away or West Ham at home, because we'll want him for Tottenham at home. So yeah, I'm on Rodgers, only just though. I think it's very, very similar.
Pras, your cheap mid?
I think Semenyo is the standout, but where is ESR here? Do we see ESR somewhere?
Yes, in terms of big chances, maybe we'll see one of the other ones. We have good minutes, good underlying. We see over here.
But look, I think between Semenyo and Rodgers, I like Semenyo. For the longer term, I think good fixtures. For 1 yellow, I think it's worth it. But price, right? 0.4, 0.5. Like when I had to sell one of them to get Salah, I just chose to sell Semenyo over Rodgers because of 0.4, 0.5. Like I just thought, because that slot will be benched a lot, that you don't want to be spending that extra amount, because Rodgers I plan to play like 2 of the next 3, but then after that not a lot of weeks where I plan to play Rodgers. So I didn't want to have like a 5.8, 5.9 million guy sitting on the bench, first bench most weeks. Even though it's Christmas period, Rodgers is good enough. But I think in isolation,
Sorry, do you think that the Villa fixtures, like I think Villa fixtures got more long-term sort of viable. It's quite viable, whereas the Bournemouth fixtures, yeah, they're fine up till 20, and then they're a sell in 21, I reckon. But you could argue that Fulham away in 19, could you jump off him then? Because then there's a bit of a swing. Again, I'm showing how much I've done planning wise, but like Palace come in to fruition around about 18, 19. Yeah, Fulham as well. So like there's an easy jump to ESR, there's an easy jump to Eze. I think the 0.8, 0.9 million that you'd need for Eze. I mean, Eze could be 6 million by the time we get to there if he keeps carrying on like this. So I do feel like Rodgers has got a little bit more long-term call to himself rather than Semenyo, to be honest.
Yeah. I think if in a structure where most teams will play most weeks 3-4-3, then Rodgers just works because you won't be playing him. But there are certain teams which want a even cheaper striker, which João Pedro have maybe another striker that don't want to play every week, like Raul. If they have a Raul, then he's not playable some of the weeks coming up after this week. And so that becomes a little bit like maybe you want a better midfielder as your 5th midfielder.
We'll also see later on in one of the drafts, I do have both Rodgers and Semenyo to be able to have Isak and Jackson. So that's like another play. But then it's 3 premiums, 2 very cheap midfielders. So then it feels like your Brunos, your Mbuemos, Gordons, Bowens might then become out of favour and a tough transfer. So
Yep.
yeah, it's all structure based, I guess.
So from what I can tell, 3 out of the 5 spots seem pretty certain. Salah, Palmer, as we discussed earlier, then the one cheaper mid, which is either Rodgers or Semenyo. Where are your other 2 spots between? I think your Boomer, obviously, is a consideration.
Yeah,
is he up for debate at all?
Yes, I believe. Yeah, there's like 1 or 2 drafts I had that don't have him, and it just basically goes from Boomer to Bruno, and then I can't remember what. I think it's like the Cunha spot goes down to like Evan Nilsson or Welbeck. So, but I think Mbuemo stays in the team for the next 2 just because he's such an easy transfer to Bowen in 14, like the same price. Bowen looks like he's going down, and Mbuemo's sort of holding steady. He could even go up to 7.6. So, you know, I'll have the money in the bank no matter what happens in 14 to be able to do that. So yeah, and I think looking at next week's captaincy in 13, it's going to be quite a headache. If Mbuemo turns up against Everton, and Leicester do look poor, and Brentford like continue this high octane football at the G-Tech, then we could see like a 4-2 again. So in 13, Mbuemo could be a captaincy option. So I feel like I've kind of got to have him really.
Let's talk 13. Do you think potentially Vissa is a better captain option than Boomer? Maybe just for that week you get him in?
Maybe, you know, you'll get the extra point, I suppose, for the goal, but Vissa's just, he's different, man. He's so good. He just seems to get points like so easily. But I feel like owning Vissa's a little bit trickier with the 2-week punt. I feel like I'd rather just start with João Pedro. I've not really considered Vissa in any of the drafts that I've had. I think it's a trickier transfer, whereas Mbuemo to Bowen to Gordon to whoever, you can even keep Mbuemo. I personally don't look like I will, but I'm not sure. If you own Vissa, then yeah, obviously if you own him already, then it could be a different conversation. But I'm just trying to captain a midfielder over the attacker, albeit the bonuses are different.
Let's move on to the forwards. I think Isak is a lock.
Yeah, he's only fallen out of 1 draft, and that was to get that. This is because of my love affair with Jackson, and it then enabled Mbuemo to Bruno. But I'm pretty sure he's just going to stay, and will probably stay until around like 25. There is that 3 fixtures in the middle with Villa, United, and Tottenham that you could sell him, but then you probably want to jump back on because then there's like 3 easy-ish games that pop out again before City, and then we go into the blank. So who knows what's going to happen? So yeah, he's been a lock really. The next 5 out of 6 are really really good.
Right. I think the second and third spot more up for debate. I think you mentioned you're also weighing up a more expensive striker like a Jackson versus somebody like a Cunha, right?
Yeah, so João Pedro has been pretty much nailed on. I do think he's electric as a player. To hear Hertzler say those things is obviously very encouraging. The penalties, the minutes might not be there, but if he gets 75 minutes, you saw what he did in 25 against City. So, you know, he is pretty explosive as an option. 5.4 is so cheap. So Isak and João Pedro are pretty much nailed on. That third spot is such a headache because this is literally where all the structures are crucial, basically. So I've gone from anyone from Evan Nilsson to Cunha to Jackson, and basically whichever one I pick then obviously dictates what midfielder or the 2 midfielders that I then pick from, basically. So yeah, my dangerous side, my heart, I guess, and my head are all fighting against wanting Jackson. Cunha just feels like he'll tick along nicely, and everything will be well, and you know, it's all sort of happy and easy with Cunha, but Jackson is just that guy.
Before we talk about those guys, talking about Evan Nilsson, I want your perspective as a Bournemouth fan.
Do you know, I think he started a little bit iffy, a bit ropey. He did okay, he sort of worked hard, but didn't have that end product. Albeit we had some tough fixtures at the start anyway, but he seems like he's finding his feet now. I think there was a little bit made about his language barrier. He obviously came over. He's obviously Brazilian, so didn't speak much English. Probably still doesn't, but he's obviously playing with his teammates, getting to know his surroundings, obviously getting a bit more comfortable living around Bournemouth. He seems to have really taken off. He seems very popular. The fans love him. So every time he scores, we say that's another million chalked off his price tag that we paid for him. So he seems to be doing okay. I know he had the benching against Villa and Unal started. I would be surprised if we do see that. Yeah, you might get one in this busy period, but I would say he's still nailed. He obviously doesn't have pens anymore, and you can get that with other cheap strikers. So, I mean, the fixtures are there. He's solid, but I just feel like that you could get somewhere else. I feel like he's like a third kind of ranking, where he's like you can have the João Pedro, you could stretch to Cunha, even the Welbecks, Vissers, Raul. I just feel like there's other people slightly ahead of him, but I am enjoying him as a fan. So there's that.
Plus, talk to me on Jackson versus Cunha. I have a very firm opinion on the subject, but I want to get your opinion first.
Oh God, I was waiting for you to hopefully sway me, but do you know? I think Cunha's obviously going to tick along, like I said. I do think Wolves have been fine from an attacking point of view. However, with their fixtures, I look at them. Aid Nuri's got nowhere near my drafts. I'm actually enjoying going against him because he will still be 20-30% owned. I don't see any clean sheets for Wolves. Maybe the Ipswich game at home, but Ipswich have been attacking well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Wolves concede in every game. He is so talismanic though, Cunha. He does obviously have the pens. He's not taken one yet this year. And he's so unbelievably good for bonus points. It's ridiculous. Like he'll score and come away with like 35 to 40 points, and that's just nailed on for 9. So his goal's worth 7. I don't know. He feels boring. If Jackson was like touch cheaper, and then I think it would be easier. And if Cunha was a touch cheaper, then I think it would be slightly easier. But to go with Jackson, like he does have those double-digit hauls, like the West Ham game. Is it Wolves when they? I don't know. I think he might have got double digits then. But he's had 2 already, and he just seems to get like those shots. He'll get assists from shots that are saved from keepers, and then someone will follow it in. He's that kind of guy. But I just look at like how good are those Chelsea fixtures for so long. He just keeps pulling me back in.
I get it, Robert. But aren't you worried about the game time risks with some of the games being midweek games with Jackson? Even if not like, full rest, even like, early substitutions, 60th, 70th minutes will be the norm, right? Versus a Cunha, who is going to be there literally till the last kick of the ball every game.
Yeah, and you do see it with Jackson. There are a few subs that he's had in the 70th minute or 70 to 80th. And then the last few where the game's been tight, he has made it sort of 85 plus. I'm so dictated by seeing all these green, blue ticker fixtures for Chelsea, and just see so much upside with him with very little ownership. So I'm so tempted, and I think this will be the decision that goes down to the wire. Not to make a pun on the show, but so it's going to be a tricky one to get Jackson.
Pras, one word answer from you: Cunha or Jackson?
Cunha, man. I'm not trusting Jackson.
I knew it. I just needed to hear it. Cool. I think we've got a good discussion. We'll move on to the drafts, but before that, let's do a plug for Sleeper, Pras.
Yes. So Sleeper, as you guys know, do a Champions League pick'em. So basically, Champions League is back after the international break. So you have some time to think about it. So download the app, and what you need to do is basically pick the results for the Champions League next round, and it's weekly, right? So the top 3 that are the winners every week who have predicted the best results win up to $1,000 of prizes. So actually, it's a nice game that you can have on the side, completely free. And so that was something that we wanted to bring to your attention, so you can get downloading and get to sort of understand the app before the Champions League kicks off. And then you, of course, have the draft, which over the international break, a lot of folks have been getting involved with. We have our own drafts with the content creators, which I put out a tweet on our team. Looks absolutely fantastic. Like a lot of the defenders we've talked about, we have them like Dean, Hall, Leif Davis, Kirkes, like all the dudes we have Jackson, Hoyland, João Pedro. I love our team, and Saka. So if you wanted to get involved, you can get involved in the draft. And then obviously we have our own Pick'em League as well for the FPL Wire. And the details of that are, we can share again in the description. But it's basically we have monthly prizes, and we've given out now 14 Premier League jerseys for the October, September, and August months. And obviously, we're coming up at the end of November as well. So get involved in that. There's a Discord league that we have, and there's a public league.
Fantastic. Let's move on to the wildcard drafts. Now, before we do our bus team, let's get this done. So which one is it? Hold on. Yes, this is my draft. Let me just look at messed these images up. Have I? Hold up. Yeah, this is the one. Thank you. There we go. So this is the one, Brad, you sent me. I'll just read it out for our podcast, guys. You've got Sanchez, Verbruggen in goal, Gabriel, Konate, Van Heck, Martinez, Anderson in defense, Bruno, Rogers, Bumo, Palmer, and Salah, with João Pedro, Isak, and Jackson. So Jackson does make your initial draft, but like as you mentioned, there are primarily 3 spots you are undecided on, right? And that's Jackson, Bruno, and Bumo, right?
Yeah. So basically, the back 7 stays the same pretty much now for all my drafts. I just think pound for pound, there's good value in that 3, the trio that you see. And then obviously Gabriel and Konate have just been nailed on for me. I want a piece of both of those defences. Obviously, there is potential to double up the Arsenal defence, even the Liverpool defence if Alisson is confirmed fit. But sort of sticking with that goalkeeper rotation for the moment. Rogers has been my cheap 5th midfielder, like I said, pretty consistently. Palmer and Salah obviously don't need to touch any more on them. And then João Pedro and Isak again, pretty locked. So it's just those 3 spots, and I can do a lot. I think, is it 24.5 mil that's left? So there's quite obviously a decent chunk of change there to spend. The draft that we saw has obviously got Jackson, Bruno, and Mbeumo. The other one that I could then do with the 3 would be Saka, Mbeumo, and Cunha. So effectively, it would be Saka and Cunha versus Bruno and Jackson. That's probably my number 1 dilemma at the moment in terms of my 2 favourite drafts. So Saka and Cunha versus Bruno and Jackson. So if the viewers want to help me out, I'll be on Twitter and X to see what the viewers prefer. I reckon Pras has got his sensible head on and will tell me to go for Saka and Cunha.
No, I would tell you to get Bruno and Cunha.
Hey, Bruno and Jackson or Bruno and Cunha?
Bruno and Cunha, and leave the money in the bank and get Saka in 2 weeks.
Right, but he's fit because we don't know yet about his fitness to see he starts both the games, and the updates too are good for Bruno. I'm completely on board with what Pras is saying.
I haven't thought of that, so it's good that I've come on here. So I have to thank Pras now when I suddenly shoot out the ranks. But yeah, that's sort of my major dilemma. There's a bit more like funkier trios. I think one of them's like Saka, Semenyo, and Jackson. Again, like you can see the urge to get Jackson. All I've got to do is drop Mbeumo down to Semenyo. It's a bit of an upgrade, but you can keep Semenyo for longer. And I think the general trend with all my drafts has been that actually I should be able to roll pretty easy in 13. Obviously, fingers crossed, no injuries and suspensions. And then 14, maybe look to make 1 or 2 transfers with Bruno / Mbeumo. And then from like 15 through to sort of 18, 19, the team doesn't need any transfers. So hopefully I'll be able to bank up to nearly 5 through the busy period. Obviously, it sounds great to say it's on paper, but the reality is it could be a lot different. So if someone like Haaland does look to found his form again, and we decide that we do need him again in 18, then hopefully with 5 free transfers, there can be sort of a mass exodus to get Haaland back, or like even like a De Bruyne or Foden to cover some sort of points from Haaland. But that could be at the expense of Saka. if you have a look at the Arsenal fixtures from 19 to 23, then yeah, there could be some wiggle room there. So that was just a bit of future planning with the wild card. But yeah, I'll wait to be roasted in the comments.
No, but I really like what Pras said, because a lot of times in terms of long-term goals, we end up ignoring the short-term potential. And I think the short-term potential is potentially higher with Bruno than Saka over the next 2 fixtures. So I really like Pras's suggestion over there, Brad.
I think that's been the tricky thing for me, and that is swaying me towards Jackson, because I do think the Arsenal next 4 are tricky. I don't see a lot of goals and hauls from Saka, so I feel like I can compete with having other assets. Whereas like Bruno, I can see 2 double-digit hauls. I can see like an 11-pointer, a 14-pointer in the next 2 games, and you get that, and you could be 10, 15 points up on the herd behind me. So it'd be quite nice to jump up the ranks with that.
Right. Let's just give you some wildcard drafts that we've made, just for some feedback. So this is mine. I've got Raya, Fabianski, Gabriel, Dunk can be Van Heck, Hall, and Dalot can be Konate. This is just a placeholder over here, can be any 5 million defender. I like to keep Nouri, because I think he's just pretty much any week you want a defender to come off the bench. He's a safe pick in terms of attacking returns. Bruno, Semenyo, Bumo, Palmer, and Salah. So again, very similar. Up top, I've got Havertz now instead of Jackson, because again, if you don't know anything about Saka, you get Havertz there. But I like the point that Pras made. You're potentially locking yourself out of Saka with the 3rd Arsenal. So I don't think I would go with that. I think I would go with Cunha, now that we have had this discussion. But very similar to yours. I think it's only 1 or 2 spots different. It's just the goalkeeper is a bit more spent, which you might be tempted to, right? If you go with Bruno, you'll have that money lying around.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking about that. But yeah, I do feel like there was a very set pool of players to choose from for Wildcard 12. I think previous weeks, like early in the season, with 6 and 7, there's a little bit of umming and ahhing about who you should go for. But I feel like there's only sort of max 25, 30 players that realistically you should be looking at for this wildcard. So a lot of it has picked itself, really.
Now, this is Pras's wildcard, quite similar again with the goalkeepers, Gabriel, Hall. He's got Colville in here. That's the only change, I think, instead of like the 5 million defender. He's got Saka, Rogers, Bruno, Palmer, Salah. So no Semenyo, but Saka is in there. And Cunha. So similar to what you had, but I think it's a Bumo spot, Pras. So I think this is Pras's team value, right? It's monstrous.
So I've got Bruno instead of Bumo, because I just think long-term Bumo, you'll miss the next 2, but maybe Bruno is the better pick. If you have the team value, like you could also have this with just Bumo instead of Bruno. But I feel like I would give up one of those 2 rather than Saka if he is fit. But I think, look, in most wildcards, like 4 midfielders pick themselves, 2 forwards pick themselves. I think 3 defenders pick themselves, and the other defenders are pretty much to taste. Like there is no right answer. And the keepers are also pretty much to taste. Like I like double Arsenal defense. If you want to rotate keepers, that's fine. If you want to have one single keeper, that's also fine. So I think it's not a wildcard where you can go too crazy in terms of, that there are picks outside that you have to go for. I think one other shout that I had was you can go Welbeck and João Pedro. Like ever since João Pedro's come back, people have forgotten about Welbeck. I read somewhere that Nathan Ferguson is looking for a loan in January. So is Enciso. So you can already see that Welbeck is pretty much good value for most starts. And so having both of them is not a bad shout at all for like 5.4 and 6 million.
That draft that I had, Evan Nilsson, to have 2 cheap attackers with Isak, could have been Welbeck. It's just I really liked Van Heck in defence, and then obviously having Verbruggen, I was already tripled up in Brighton. I was trying to find like a trio of defenders with my Van Heck, Martinez, Anderson that didn't involve a Brighton defender, so that there was the potential to have the João Pedro and Welbeck double up with Verbruggen, and that would have been my Brighton trio. I think I would have enjoyed that draft more if I could have. I do prefer Welbeck over Evan Nilsson. There might be some Bournemouth bias, like anti-bias, if that makes sense. But I just couldn't find the trio that worked that nicely without Van Heck. I think it would probably meant I had to go with Colwill. But then again, that would have been Sanchez, Colwill, Palmer. And if I did somehow want Jackson even later down the line, sort of 18, 19, then that would be 2 transfers to change that, not mistake, but that path, basically.
Right.
Let's do our bus teams and wrap up real quick. So this is
Yep.
me, Flecken, Lewis, Gabriel, Nuri, Semenyo, Salakap, Bumo, Palmer, Rogers, Haaland and Raul with Strand Larson, Mikalenko and Greaves on the bench. I've got 1 free transfer, 0.6 in the bank. I'm a little bit worried about Raul now. He plays tomorrow morning, that's on Wednesday at 2:30 a.m. and Mexico are playing a 2-leg playoff, which they lost the first leg to Honduras. They have the home leg now. So you assume that Jimenez is going to get good minutes, plays tomorrow, gets back in the UK around Thursday. The game is I think it's a 3 p.m. kickoff on Saturday. Do you guys feel do you think he starts? Because what happened in the last international break, it was a similar thing. He didn't play, I think, one of the games. He played the second game, but he didn't play the first game. So fatigue was not as much of a factor. Now, my plan is to move him on to Joao Pedro the next week. Do I still just do it this week, Pras?
I mean, see what they say. It's such a good fixture that it's difficult to suggest to sort of take a leap of faith and not play him. I'd be uncomfortable selling. Like Joao Pedro plays away to Bournemouth. That's not easy.
Not great.
Like in that case, you could even just play Strand Larson this week and evaluate next week, right? Like if Joao Pedro doesn't start next week, suddenly people start to panic. Like, oh, is his recovery going to be longer? So I just feel that it's okay to wait a week for Joao Pedro. And then see, maybe you want Welbeck next week. So I just think the value of waiting is there unless there is a clear sign that you need to sell.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get any help from Silva. It's usually going to be we will see, we will assess. No managers are really transparent these days. What do you think, Brad?
Not to bang the same drum again, but just completely agree with Pras. I think that fixture is really, really nice and much better than Bournemouth away. I wouldn't be surprised if Joao Pedro does score and come away with a good return, but I think the odds would suggest that Raul is more likely to be involved in a return than Joao Pedro, personally.
I also want to wait and give Haaland, because if Haaland blanks again, I think my patience will run out.
But then they'll need a hit next week.
Right, that's what I'm saying. I want to roll this week and see what I do. Maybe I do Haaland to Joao Pedro, then I'll have 10 million in the bank, literally. Then I can just go shopping. Now, This is LR's team. Again, quite similar. He's got Mikalenko in there instead of Lewis. Do you agree with that? Would you play Mikalenko over Lewis? Brentford at home versus Lewis Tottenham
There's just
at
a
home?
news coming out now that Branthwaite is fit. I think Brentford score, right? But then I also think Spurs score. So then it's a question of who's more attacking. Arguably, Lewis is more attacking. It's close. I think both are like 1-2 pointers.
I think I'd still back Manchester City being the quote-unquote bigger team, but will Lewis even start? Because traditionally Walker is going to play against Son. So Lewis would be pretty much, where do you expect to play in place of Guardiola?
Walker did start midweek for England and Lewis didn't. I don't know if that matters at all. But I would play Lewis. Like that's why we got him. Maybe he doesn't come on at all.
Brad, you agree?
I think Lewis will be benched. I was listening to Ross talk about, I think he's still got Lewis in his team, FPL Raptor, and he was saying it will be Walker versus Son. Gvardiol's not done much as centre-back, so he sees him being back to left-back. And then you're not obviously going to play Lewis down the middle. I think they'll have like Ake, Akanji, and maybe Ruben Diaz back. So I do think he'll be benched. If he start, I'd be very surprised if he started in midfield next to Kovacic. I think Gundo will probably be trusted for that big game. So I do think Lewis will be benched. So I think you might be forced into playing Mikalenko, to be honest.
Interesting. Okay, I think that will be a late decision. But yeah, it's a good shot. I think somebody mentioned in the chat that Kovacic might be injured, so I have to look that up as well. If that's the case, then Rico's odds obviously increased, right? But I think LR mentioned that he had a similar dilemma with like Raul to Joao Pedro. I think we've already discussed that. Plus, you have some exciting transfers lined up.
I do, but I do have to run soon. So I'm going to, obviously I'll have the team selection, but I will try to summarize it quickly. So I've got Edison in goal, who needs to go to Raya. So that's one transfer that's locked. Like I'm just waiting for Raya to drop. If he drops, I might even do it if Raya doesn't drop. So that's a transfer that is one of my 2 free transfers. At the moment, I'm playing actually Lewis over 8 Nouri. But now that Brad has mentioned all this rotation risks, I might think about it. But then I've got Gabriel and I've got Pinnock. Pinnock again, after West Ham last week, I'm enjoying playing a defender against West Ham's forwards. So I might do that just for the same kind of thing. And then I've got Bumo, Salah captain, Saka, Palmer, Rogers. So I'm starting Rogers this week. This is why I'm not doing the Calvert-Lewin to João Pedro move. I'm going to delay that to next week. And Solanke to Isak. So the two moves would be Isak and Raya in for Edison and Solanke. That's as things stand now. Like if there's a scenario in which one of Umbumo or Palmer or Saka is out, I think likeliest if Saka is out, likely in the sense that Palmer looks fine, Bumo looks fine, Saka we have no idea of yet. Then I could even do, let's say, Calvert-Lewin to Isak and Saka to Bruno. And keep Solanke and have him on the bench. No, instead of Calvert-Lewin. So Solanke would go to the bench.
I understood, yeah. Isak would come instead of Calvert-Lewin.
Isak would come in instead of Calvert-Lewin, and I would play Bruno. And then next week, I would do Solanke to João Pedro, or maybe even play Solanke, who's home to Fulham. So it gives me options. I've got 2 free transfers. But if Saka was out, then I would have to take a hit for Edison to Raya as well, which again, I think I will do anyway. So that's where I am.
With Saka, we need a clear timeline, right? The problem is if he, etc., you want to keep him for later, would you just get rid?
No, if he's iffy, then I'll just play him. It's fine. Like then I might get tempted to do the Calvert-Lewin to João Pedro move this week itself. So in case Saka doesn't come on, I have João Pedro as cover. I'll see. So I'll talk about all these sort of scenarios in team selection later.
Cool, fantastic. Let's wrap up. It's been fantastic having you on, Brad. I hope we were helpful. We haven't confused you more. Most people, that's what they complain after listening to our podcast, that you guys have only confused me more.
So, all good. Been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Any last words, Pras?
No, it's. He says it's a pleasure for him to be on. It's an absolute honor for us to have for you to join us, and it's been such a pleasure to talk actual FPL with you. So it's great. Thanks for joining.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us, guys. You will be no further pod from us this week, but we'll be back with our 3 team selection videos. I think we will wait for the press conferences and all the international matches to finish. They'll be with you Thursday and Friday. Thanks for joining us. Hit like and subscribe.